Hi and welcome to Mod of the Week. This week we're talking about gas tanks. Dirt bikes tend to be very limited in terms of range, which is fair. It's hard to imagine any of us going more than 100 miles on the rough mountain trails designated for off-highway vehicles in a single day. But when you have a dual sport, the practical range of your bike is substantially greater. Even if a dual sport is used only for trail riding, there is a possibility of riding to and from the trailhead rather than loading up before heading out each time. Coupled with this is the fact that many trails are separated by stretches of public roads. You increase the likely number of miles you might cover in a single day. Most often, dual sport riders feel the limitations of their bike's range when going on adventure rides, where back roads and scenic routes mean less traffic and fewer gas stations. Many of the world's most beautiful places are far from civilization. The Badlands of Montana, the high plains of the American West, or the canyons of the Colorado Plateau are a few such places, where stopping for gas means going 50 miles out of the way. In my experience, no route will go more than 300 miles without coming reasonably close to a gas station, though it is very rare for any backroads route to require more than 150 miles of range between fill-ups. With limited range, things become so much more critical. In the planning stages of a trip, you have to consider the potential for getting lost, closed roads and detours, or even bike damage resulting in spilt fuel. As well, many country gas stations are closed in the evenings. They won't let you pay at the pump, and frequently shut down before maps and other sources can be updated. The curious thing is that with less range, you are likely going to need to travel further on such trips, just because of the constant detours to get gas. And, in effect, you'll spend less time enjoying the scenery and more time on a chore. This is why so many dual sport riders opt to increase the range of their bikes, either with a larger gas tank or the addition of an auxiliary tank. So first let's talk about larger gas tanks. The stock tanks on most bikes are made out of metal, mainly for manufacturing reasons, as well as cost and weight reductions. Aftermarket tanks tend to be made out of molded plastic. Equal volume containers are roughly the same weight, though stock tanks tend to be heavier if there's a locking mechanism at the cap. Aftermarket tanks offer a bit more durability when it comes to superficial damage, as they will flex to some extent upon impact. However, plastics are less resistant when it comes to certain corrosives, such as brake fluid or carburetor cleaner, so do keep this in mind when using such substances. In regard to melting, the specific compounds are designed to withstand temperatures up to that of the surface of a working engine. As well, they are designed not to contact hot surfaces. But keep in mind there is some potential for melting if installed incorrectly on an engine prone to overheating. The worst thing you can do is light your bike on fire, so make sure there is no gas leaks or contact points when seated on your bike. There are 3 companies which make aftermarket tanks for most dual sports, and each has a different approach to their design. The first, Clark, makes their tanks by enlarging stock tanks, making them taller at the cap and moving out the radiator shrouds to maximize volume. This is a cost-effective solution, but the results are less than elegant. As components are moved around, things tend to align poorly. Comparatively, IMS designs their tanks to maximize volume whilst leaving existing components in place. Essentially, they fill any and all unused space around the gas tank, such as the contours under plastic, space left behind the radiators, and elsewhere. This makes for very complex molds, and so IMS tanks are costlier to produce. Finally, tanks designed by a turbis tend to maximize volume by replacing the radiator shrouds entirely. This does offer quite a bit more volume, but in less than an aesthetically pleasing fashion. As well, their designs regularly have more than one low point, and in order to use all the fuel in the tank, one has to tip the bike over to shift fuel around. Given this isn't much fuel, and most people don't run their tanks so low that you would need to tip your bike over, but it is a peculiar flaw that makes me wonder if they were more concerned with stats than an effective design. Plus, replacing the shrouds means that the gas tank is prone to damage during a crash, but I imagine it would likely take several bashes and scrapes before the tank itself would fail. Furthermore, turbis tanks tend to be incompatible with many other useful components such as radiator braces, which may be a factor for some. However, with an additional gallon or 2 over their competitors, these disadvantages may be insignificant. Aftermarket tanks tend to have an array of color options, and this may be of particular interest to some, as lightly colored tanks are somewhat transparent. This means that a white or natural colored tank, you can easily see how much fuel remains just by light passing through. And so we come to auxiliary tanks. There are a number of curious designs for expanding an existing tank by siphoning fuel from a secondary tank at a number of locations. They are convenient since they don't require you to stop and move fuel from one tank to another. However, they tend to get in the way of other components and rarely hold much fuel. Generally, these are only used on bikes during long-distance races, such as for a poker run or other events where refueling means falling behind. Instead, many riders choose to carry a spare gas can. This might be just a fuel bottle stowed away with other luggage for emergencies, or a larger tank such as those made by Rotopacks. They can provide much more fuel than a larger gas tank, and at a substantially lower price. The nice thing about Rotopack's tanks is that they are intended for off-road use, with a solid mounting system that can be applied to any bike, and as well, they have thick walls for reduced risk of puncture. Additionally, Rotopacks makes a number of containers beyond gas tanks, and on an adventure ride, you're probably going to need to take water with you. These offer a convenient solution. My only real complaint when it comes to Rotopacks is that their caps are very difficult to remove, as they will leak unless screwed on ridiculously tight. Also, be sure to buy the deluxe mounts, those with 3 pieces, since it's extremely difficult to crank down tanks using the standard mounts. So I switched up to the Clark tank. I would have gone with an IMS tank, because they are slightly better, but they don't make one for the 06-07 model, or the early model KLXs. In order to make this fit, I had to shave down this part. And it is kind of complicated making these fit, and the tank does have an issue with certain mods, like of course it does make the seat sit further back. It's kind of shifted up, and it is very poorly fitting. Or I've picked this Clark tank, which is larger. It's 2.8 gallons, or 2.8 I think. So it does increase the range from about 100 miles to about I could probably get away with 160.